Hello, guys. We are back with another May mental health awareness box talk. This time, you're going to hear Nate's story.
Hola.
All right. So, for those of you that didn't see mine on Monday, you can also go back. Monday, we did it around the same time. You can check out my story. And today, we're going to be here with Nate and hear his story. So, to give you a little recap of what this is, we ask you guys to be vulnerable and tell us your stories, your insecurities, your goals, your aspirations, all of that stuff. And so today and throughout this month, we are going to be here to tell you our story and do the exact same thing that we ask you guys to do with us. So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Nate.
Yes. Jordan.
Let's hear about how you got into fitness. Your first true experience with fitness that was consistent.
Well, the consistent part that kind of threw me off. So, I was raised kind of playing childhood sports, but really that consistent workout didn't start until I graduated high school and joined the Army 5 days after I graduated. So, being in the military, physical fitness is like our bread and butter. And so thrown right into basic training. And that really was kind of the consistent part of my fitness journey.
So your consistency had to continue on throughout the military due to PT tests. So when you retired from the military, how did your fitness journey change?
Another great question. So I'm going to back up just the last 2 years of my military career. I ended up, well, actually, I'll back up before that. So physical fitness was pretty consistent through the first, 8 to 10 years. And in 2005, the unit I was with got tagged for deployment to Iraq. And I had already kind of started packing on some weight. I was in leadership responsibilities, harder to kind of carve out that time. And then the first 4 or 5 months of that year-long deployment, I was embedded with the Iraqi military. So it was really difficult to kind of stay consistent. And then the Army brought in some workout equipment, kind of took over a metal building and set up a gym.
Awesome.
And I partnered with a Marine actually who said, hey, let's go, let's do 2-a-days. He was really fit, big into protein, taught me a lot of that stuff. As an Army medic, I understood some of the basics, but he really kind of helped me get to that next level, did some bodybuilding in college. And so I did 2-a-days. I lost like 20 some pounds. I came back on mid-tour leave and Noemi was like, ooh la la. And I was like, oh, this is what it feels like to be like active and strong. And so fast forward, came back from deployment, went through a really dark season, suicidal thoughts, PTSD as a medic. I saw a lot of things, did a lot of things that really messed with my head. Nightmares started, and it was a little bit before I gave myself permission to get help. And so was kind of blindsided a little bit on the mental health piece coming back from deployment. I had a great marriage and boys and church and God, and everything was set to be successful, and to be blindsided by all the things that come with experiencing trauma. And that rocked my world, and fitness and physical activity was like bottom of the rung. And it went from being a primary thing that was important to not important at all.
Yeah.
And it became a survival thing. I would wake up from nightmares in the middle of the night, dress in all black, and run in the middle of the street in our neighborhood, hoping to be hit by a car. And that journey, then the counseling and the medication, the medication has side effects and, messes with your head and your life, I was fatigued all the time and, lived life in a fog. And so put on a bunch of weight and just got unhealthy, and I was drinking hard liquor and I never drank before, and just became really went into self-destruction mode.
Things just started stacking.
Yeah, and it was really, really difficult to climb out of that. All that weight I lost during deployment, working out, gained all that back and then some. It was the most unhealthy I had been. And And so that's it was a huge hiccup. Got back on track for a little bit. We came here to Georgia in 2012. Great unit, great mission. And in 2015, I got hit again. And I was diagnosed with a neuromuscular disease. Some of you know that story and have heard me mention it. Some of you have seen me trip and stumble and fall, training camps and taking camps. And in 2015, Burn Evans wasn't open yet. Yeah. But in 2016, as I was in the medical board process, the Army said you can no longer stay in. Yeah. I stopped working out because working out reminded me of what I couldn't do. And watching my body change and what I say wasting away is how I felt at the time. And it rocked my world. 2016, Burn Evans opened. Naomi was founding member. And after probably 3 weeks, she's like, you have got to come to Burn. And I was like, I'm not going to a women's gym. And so she's like, it's free on Saturdays. There's guys. I'm like, I'm not going. And some of that was kind of the protective, I used that as the excuse, but deep down I was crushed. My ego
if your capabilities would match with what your body was capable of at the time.
And being found out, and pride and ego, it can get in our way. We can be our own worst enemy.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And so that diagnosis it rocked me to the core, because all of a sudden I was faced with loss of career, loss of my job, responsibilities. I got grounded. I couldn't do my mission in my unit. And my unit said, you need to go into the Warrior Transition Battalion. And the Army said, we're going to med board you out and retire you. And so I ended up really blessed. I hit 24 years of service and retired in 2017. And what was great about that is during that 2015 to 2017 time frame, I'm going through all this, Noemi was building a community here. Mm-hmm. And so even though I was wrecked, she had that support, and she'll share some of that story, I'm sure. But that's kind of how fitness changed through military, and now post-military. Obviously, it's still a part of my life, but that's not easy either.
Yeah. How is it owning a gym, trying to come to camps while doing all the behind the scenes stuff? Has your fitness been affected by owning a gym?
You would think that I'd be ripped and strong in the best shape of my life, but that's not the reality of life sometimes. And being a high performer, I always had higher expectations of myself. And so when we had the opportunity to buy Burn, it was all roses and rainbows, and it's like, this is going to be great. We're going to be in the gym all the time. We're going to work out. And, all the while knowing that I was facing continued limitations. Yeah. My body, there is no cure. There is no current treatment. And so this progressive atrophy of the muscles and the wasting away of my nerves, that's one piece of it. But then when I'm here and working out, I'm thinking about what I have to do in the gym, and coming face to face every time I work out of what I can't do that I used to be able to do. Yeah. And it just got easier for a while to just not come and work out, so I didn't have to deal with that aspect of it. And then I just shifted all my focus on the work as an owner and not myself.
Yeah, I feel like that's common for people, kind of running from essentially what scares us, like seeing, but kind of back to what I said, you're adjusting now to your new season of life. You're adjusting to CMT very well. I mean, you've made it this year. You've made it into the gym a lot more, and you've made that a priority. And I've noticed that, and I think that's amazing to kind of adjust to that season of life. Regardless of how long it's taken, you did make that adjustment, and you're starting to make that, and will continue to make that adjustment.
Yeah, and the balance, I think, is a big part of what we do. I mean, you covered in focus meetings, and you've been a source of encouragement. Even Noemi is like, you have to stay active. Just do the strength days.
Yes.
Because those conditioning days are a higher risk activity for me,
of course.
and I have to balance that, but it's not an excuse. And I relied on the diagnosis, and I leaned on that as a crutch, as a reason for not coming, when really it's just I hadn't done all that hard work and the head work needed to make it. And so I used humor a lot to deflect. And some of you
a normal response.
Covering camps as a trainer, it gets in my head probably more so than you guys, because that's always in the back of my head. What if I stumble? What if I can't do it? And knowing everybody in Burn deserves the very best, and I can bring the very best in my heart and mind, even if my body can't.
Yeah, I think
and trying to embrace that and figure out how to communicate that with confidence and grace. And reality is we're all dealing with that
in some way or another. Yeah,
for sure.
And so I think every time you get on the floor, I mean, you are serving as an inspiration to somebody, whether you know it or not, just by showing up, still training camps when you can. And I think that's very amazing that you do that.
Yeah.
So Nate,
yes.
The question you asked me, I think we're going to keep this consistent because I really like it. If you were to tell one piece of advice to your younger self, what would that piece of advice be?
2 different pieces. Is that allowed?
Yes, of course.
Very short. The younger me, like junior high, high school, even into the early years of adulthood in the Army, the one piece of advice I would give that Nathan now would be, don't major in the minor things. What that has come to mean to me is, if everything is a big deal, then nothing is a big deal. And so I was approaching life like, if I messed up on a test in the Army, it was this monstrous thing. And if I didn't do well on the PT test, it was a big deal. If I didn't write a letter to my mom and dad that week, it was a big deal. And so I lost sight of priorities and realizing not everything is that serious. Mm-hmm. And that kind of folds into the advice to my younger adult self is, don't take yourself so seriously. And that kind of ties into a little bit of what you had talked about with grace, and giving yourself permission to be where you're at.
Yeah, 100%.
And about 3 weeks ago, I had shared kind of this new revelation. It's tied to the advice, and I wish my younger self knew this even just 5 years ago with the diagnosis. And that is, I may not be able to do 100% of what I used to be able to do, physically, but I can give 100% of the 50% I can do now.
Yes.
And so,
meeting yourself where you're at.
Yeah, and understanding that life happens, and some of you, it's children or college sports injuries, or just life.
Yeah.
And
even an extreme example, just to really let you guys understand, it's you wouldn't expect somebody that won a gold medal at the Olympics to be able to do that when they're 95.
Yeah,
they're in a completely
great example.
Yes, they were able to at one point, but that doesn't mean they will always be able to do that. And so you have to adjust your mindset. As hard as it is, adjusting your mindset to your new capabilities. And if you're giving 100% at your new capability, then you're rocking it.
Yeah. And my peak performance was during deployment. Mm-hmm. 2-a-days, and I would do strength in the morning and some conditioning or abs, and it was 6 days a week, and I'd rest on day 7 and get back to it. That 30-year-old that was benching what I was benching and squatting what I was squatting and curling what I was curling, that's not me now.
Yeah. And
so, but what is the best I can give in here?
Exactly.
And recognizing that and giving 100% of that new percentage, and giving myself that grace. And that, if I had known that, I may not have been in as dark of a place thinking about suicide and thinking about and drinking and just trying to numb all of that. But that deployment, that post-deployment season helped me with the news of the diagnosis and this season, and it wasn't as dark, but it had its own challenges.
Of
so
course.
Hopefully that makes sense.
It does. Thank you so much for sharing your story, being vulnerable to me, because I learned a lot that I didn't know. So thank you for being vulnerable, coming on our box talk, and being vulnerable to the members. If you guys have any further questions for Nate, pull him aside when you guys see him in camp, or drop your comments below, and I know he will be willing to answer those. So thank you guys for tuning in. Next week, you guys will see Madison's story. So we will catch you next week. Thank you guys.
Bye. Thank you.